The 2000s and early 2010s were absolutely filled with pet-related video games. From the classic NINTENDOGS to Connectimals to PS3's iPet. Everywhere you looked, there was a themed pet game of some description on the store shelf. These were especially popular on the Nintendo DS, as made popular by NINTENDOGS, but genuinely, if you could think of an animal name and just stick the letter Z on the end of it, I'm sure there was a game for it. Tigers, dolphins, hamsters, you get the gist. There were a lot. But then we fast forward to the launch of the Nintendo 3DS, where they brought out NINTENDOGS plus cats, and, well, it didn't connect quite as well. The launch lineup for the 3DS was notably quite weak, and Nintendo believed that pushing NINTENDOGS again was going to be their saving grace, but sadly, it was pretty much exactly the same as the first one, except this time it had cats as well, and pretty much from there, the pet genre of games just kind of dwindled out of existence. They're still there, don't get me wrong, but they were nowhere near as popular as they were back in the day. Flash forward to now, where my family are about to get a brand new puppy, and as an adult, in his 20s, I'm sat here playing Little Friends. Not just one Little Friends though, both. First up though, we have Little Friends, Dogs and Cats, developed by Imagineer exclusively for Nintendo Switch. It was released in 2018 in Japan and mid-2019 in North America, Europe and Australia. I'm just gonna come right out and say it, I did not enjoy my experience playing this whatsoever. I did not last more than a few hours because the game could just not hold my attention at all. To start with, the game gave me a choice of 6 different dog breeds. Now, I'm more of a big dog person myself. I don't have an issue with small dogs, they just aren't really my favourite. We've always had big dogs growing up, so I opted to go for the Labrador Retriever. Now, I sat there and thought, what the hell should I name my dog? And for some ungodly reason, Gertrude was the name I bestowed him. Anyway, so I got Gertrude home to our brand new, very basic, generic looking house, and this is where the problems started to show. As I had to have the Switch in the docked mode for recording purposes, it meant that I had to play the game with motion controls, which is an immediate turn off for me anyway. Now, the motion controls, sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. In some contexts, they were great, like when I was walking the dog, it worked absolutely fine. When it came to doing all the brushing and petting, I'd press the calibrate button and hold the controllers in the center like it told me to, and then it would just veer off to the left and veer off to the right either way. I don't know if that's something to do with my Joy-Cons or the game, but it was just very frustrating after a while. On top of that, throwing the frisbee or disc or whatever you want to call it, it just didn't really work well at all, so I'm sure if I'd played as handheld it might have been a little bit of a better experience, but motion controls, no, don't want them, stop. Anyway, so after what felt like a fucking eternity of petting my new best friend Gertrude, he'd finally calmed down and we were ready to start our life together in wherever the hell we were supposed to be. And it's really not that exciting. If people thought NINTENDOGS was lacking in long-term content, well, this suffers from the same issues, but I would argue worse. So I fed Gertrude, gave him some food, gave him some water, threw a toy around for a little bit, and we were ready to go on our walk. Now, back in the days of NINTENDOGS, when you were going on a walk, you could plot out your route, and then you just kind of be on the rails and be able to control a very, very small amount of the walk. On this one, you don't really plan the route, you just kind of press walk, and then you just follow the same route around. It might be in reverse, it might be down a slightly different path, but it's basically the same thing every time. You use the motion controls of the Joy-Cons, you just move your arm right or left to move the lead, and that's kind of it. There are posts for your dogs to pee on, and there's balloons that mark treasure where you can dig up. But half these balloons are on like concrete platforms or wooden bridges, and then the dog just somehow digs it up. It sounds kind of painful, if I'm honest. The only way to approach these things is if you manage to guide your dog in the direction of that before you walk past it. Once you go past it, too bad. There ain't no turning back now. Okay, so next up, it was time for Gertrude to be able to catch some frisbees. I'm going to be honest with you, it was absolutely The game did not explain the throwing very well with the motion controls, and it just got a little bit frustrating. I kind of got used to it eventually, but it didn't register every time I threw, and then sometimes I did it, it just went in a completely different direction to where I'd aimed it to go. But you know what, after all that I thought, fuck it, let's try and do the competition. And somehow, my man Gertrude pulled through, and we won. Now, I know it looks like I haven't really played much of this game at all, but please let me assure you, I did play this for a solid 4 or 5 hours, and this was pretty much all I had to show for it. So, basically, not a particularly fun time. Now, graphically, I don't think this game looks amazing either. I would say the dogs probably look about the same, if not worse, than they do on the 3DS Nintendogs, which, you know, considering that's so much older, is just ridiculous. Reviews-wise, this game really didn't fare too well either. On Metacritic, it has an average of 53 out of 100, with a lot of the complaints being basically what I've already said, where there's nothing to really do, it doesn't hold your attention, and it feels rather shallow. As of March last year, the game had sold 650,000 copies worldwide, so that's still quite impressive, and there's still some demand for these kind of games, but it's just like, just make the game better. If you're going to do a pet game, make a good pet game, don't just do some cash grab. Anyway, rant over about Little Friends Dogs and Cats, it's time to move on to Little Friends Puppy Island. Okay, so here we are on Puppy Island. Now this game released quite recently, in May last year. Now it was published by Imagineer in certain parts of the world, but was not actually developed by them. This game was developed by Big Blue Bubble, who you may recognise for developing My Singing Monsters.
Bum, 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 bum.
And that spin-off everyone forgot, My Muppet Show. Unlike its predecessor, this game was not just exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, as this also released on Steam on PC, which is very interesting. Now, right off the bat, you can probably see the graphical style of this game is very different to the first. It's a lot more colourful and it's a lot more cartoony, so if that's your kind of style, then you'll probably prefer this game. Okay, so this time around, the game does not give you a choice at the start as to what puppy you would like. It gives you a husky, and you're going to be f***ing happy about it. I, again, could not think of a very good name for the dog, so he is now called Morris. Anyway, this game impressed me so much more straight away just because it didn't make me use motion controls. When I had to pet and brush the dog, I just used the analog stick, which was lovely, and the same applied for walking, except this time I could actually control where I was walking, stop, look around, go in different directions, instead of just being on the rails and kind of gliding left to right, just aimlessly trying to hit a post. Unlike the first game, there's also a bit of a story. You end up house-sitting on this island for your friend, who boldly claims there are a lot of puppies on this island that need a home. And it's pretty much your job to just go and find them all, restore the island, make it a nice paradise for puppies and people to visit. People will build shops here and all sorts of things. It's like a very, very, very basic version of Animal Crossing, maybe. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're looking for some deep story here to entertain yourself for hours, you're probably not looking in the right place. If you're looking to just not think for a few hours or to entertain your kids for a little while, then this game is pretty much perfect for you. Now, the first game in this series felt a bit more like a soulless cash grab more than anything else. The developers knew what they were going for, but what they were going for was just bland as anything. This game just has a lot more character to it. You can tell that the developers cared a lot more about what they were making, even if it's not a perfect product. There are some mini-games, or, well, micro-games, really, that break up some of the gameplay. There's certain obstacles on your walk that you can't cross unless you complete these micro-games, including jumping, crawling, and they've all got this very cute pixel art style. At first, I was a bit skeptical about why they were even in the game, but after doing a few, I actually thought they were quite cool. Now, with all that said, this game is not by any means perfect, especially on the Switch. Now, I have not played the PC version, but the Steam user reviews are actually very positive, so I'm guessing the game works a bit better on there, but on Switch, it just has some performance issues. I seem to be finding myself saying that quite a lot at the moment with the Switch and games not running properly, but this game very rarely hit 30 frames per second whilst I was playing it in the docked mode, and it just made it a little bit less enjoyable than it could have been. It wasn't stuttery like Cars 3 was, but you could very clearly see that the Switch was not running it as well as it should have been. Especially when you consider games like Mario Wonder and Odyssey and Mario Kart and all sorts of stuff like that look way nicer and more polished but run a hell of a lot better as well. Honestly now, I'm quite tempted to just buy the Steam version to just play in my own time, which is probably a really tragic thing for me to admit, but I wouldn't mind actually being able to experience the game how it was meant to be played, and also there's achievements and all sorts of other stuff on there, and I love me some achievement hunting, so... Now, the game on Metacritic actually doesn't have an official score because it doesn't have enough reviews to justify it having a score. It has one critic review and that's 75 out of 100, which is significantly more positive than the previous game. It has one user review which is a 1 out of 10, so clearly they were not so impressed. However, the overall response to this game seems to be a lot more positive than the first one, having read through the Steam reviews and just a little bit of reception online. But for now, that's all I have to talk about today, because I really need a break from puppy games. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. And as always, I will see you in next week's video.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better!